That's a project that was after the spring restorations. Well, immediately.
Welcome, everyone. To all rise. Hand over your heart. Join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please be seated. Ms. Gloucester, take the roll.
Ricky.
Here.
Porter.
Here.
Wells.
Here.
Ritter.
Here.
And here. Beveridge. Here.
All right, we have minutes from our May 23rd regular council meeting. Any changes or corrections in the minutes? Hearing none, do we have a motion to approve?
Move.
Moved by Kavanaugh, seconded by Canton. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained. Okay, we've got 5 minutes to approve. Visitors, welcome to all of you that are here visiting tonight. This is going to be, I think, quite a meeting. We have a lot going on, but I think when you look at what's going to happen tonight, we're going to establish a reserve fund, plan ahead for paving our roads. We're going to have a meeting with the fire department. 6 communities are united. We're going to make the improvements. We have a park master plan coming tonight. We have 2 large contracts with CT. And we've got a couple of people who have volunteered to help us out. So without further ado, Eric, I'll turn the floor over to you to introduce Rich. And we would go for the park master plan.
Thank you, Council. I'd like to introduce Rich Washington, the landscape architect that I closely work with at CT Matter. Rich has been engaged in developing the park master plan for a few months now, and we finally have something that we can share with you. So without further ado, take it away, Rich.
Thank you, Eric. Appreciate it. Appreciate everybody's feedback today on the.
Excuse me, Rich. Hey, you guys use the mic, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Is it on?
Eric,
I think it's on.
just press the button.
Or at least speak into that microphone.
Okay.
Sorry.
We'll get used to it. So yeah, we worked with the group. We met out there on a cold day in, I don't forget, December or January, and looked at the site, and then it started to snow, so we weren't going to walk the site. But I put together some plans. Couple of the first sheets are just existing conditions, and then site analysis, which is basically analyzing what exists on the site, and then we'll get into the master plan. And the other sheets are just blow-ups. So I have an overall master plan, and then just to make it more legible, I did some sheets that blow up the north and the south. And then I have some kind of precedent pictures that we can look at. And these are just kind of examples of what we would like to see, some of the things that are being presented on the plan as well. And then that's part of that discussion we've had with the park, and I had some internal discussions as well on what people like to see in the park. So the first sheet map is just nice overall. You can see what's wooded, the green is obviously either meadow or hay fields. You see that actually that I am missing the property line. I did send a corrected version, but yeah, that side there, that should go continuous up there. So that, and then I subdivided the site. So we have the overall site, which is 99 acres. And then on the top, there's a smaller piece of about 3 acres, which is the activity area that's not really restricted for what's being done. There are some restrictions, but that's where the activity areas can go. The balance of the site, besides the bottom piece and the woods, is restricted from different uses by the easement, the conservation easement. So the south section to the left is, and the woods above that it's not having restrictions on it. It can be have a gazebo on it, it could have a multitude of items. Currently it is, part of the hay meadow and it is active area. Does have obviously the parking lot. So this just was a nice overview. We can kind of get a context of where the park sits in conjunction with the neighborhoods and surrounding areas. So we can jump to the next sheet. This is what we call a site analysis. So we take a look at the different areas on the site. And there's a key code on the side, if you read that, which identifies on the key codes chart on the right side. So every tag item, every number up there is associated with something on the keynote list. We have the main entries, we have the north and the south entry. Two would be the active areas, so the red is really the active areas that we can plan different activities for. They already have, the north already has the playground and the shelter and the area for concerts. Then we have three, we have various trails throughout the area. I really just tried to pick the trails off the area. There's a number of trails, moved trails through the meadows. And then we have four, so the top and the bottom are the hay fields, so we call it the old field meadows. So those are the areas that are like grow and then hay certain times of the year. And then we have a few, five would be the various wooded areas. There's restrictions on a couple of the areas, and the other areas there are not restrictions, so it depends on where it is. But those are old wooded areas. There are currently really aren't any trails going through there. I think if you go on old trails, you can see where some people have made some real primitive trails through there, but for right now, there really aren't any. 7 is the conservation area. So then we have the 8 is the non-restricted. We have obviously they have the high tension wires, which are along the whole east side. There are some trails that come from this site onto that, but we are not currently planning anything within that area. And I did walk along there, and there were some small little kind of pools in there with salamander eggs. So kind of interesting. I didn't know what they were, and I brought one of our ecologists at work, and he said, I think those are salamander eggs, and they looked it up, and so they were. So it was real interesting to see that. It was closer to where the main drainage course goes through from west to east. But there's quite a bit, there's a lot going on out there. And then we have 10, we have the existing park shelter, the constructed wetland, number 11, and then 12 is the existing playground in the north area. And as well on this, you'll see some codes where it's RSD, WBD. Those are different types of soils, and a lot of times that will relate to maybe the elevation. So you may see on top of the hill, there's one type of soil, down below there's another type of soil. And we could use that in our planning, so maybe meadows might be grow better in some soils. It may relate to how much, what the slope is on those areas, or whether those areas maybe might hold more water. When I was out in the spring, the whole site held water, so sometimes it's hard to tell. But these are general overall soils maps. And there's a variety of soils on this site. Jump to the next map. This is really the overall, and we could probably jump to the next two, the last few sheets, because those are enlargements. We can go through this. So I tried to pick out some images. If we're gonna create some meadows out there, I don't want people to think we can go out and grow some wildflower seeds and have the site suddenly look like the top images with full of flowers and whatnot. It does take some time to develop meadows, wildflower meadows. So usually what they say is 3 years. So you have to prepare the site right, plant the planted at the right time of year. There's many varieties of seeds that can be put on the site for different habitat. But it's gonna take a little bit of time to do that. And it's a large area too, so it depends on the scale of the site. And then you'll see where the burn part is. There's maintenance to these areas. You can't just plant them and let them go. There's continual maintenance. And it's not like mowing the lawn, but it's something that may need yearly inspection to make sure that we don't, start getting full of thistle or other invasive plants. There's a lot of invasive plants out there right now. So part of that's preparation for the meadow, any kind of meadow plantings itself. I have an image of the next row down on the left. There's an image of a gravel trail. That's from Froring Meadow. So they do have some gravel trails. They mow the edge, but the rest is gravel. A little more accessible. It's going to be better for year-round use. And if you need to take a maintenance vehicle on it, it's not going to sink into the mud like a grass trail. And then the mowed meadow trails, a lot of those work pretty well right now. Once we're out of wet season, they're not as accessible as a gravel trail. So if someone, if you want to push a stroller, or someone's in a wheelchair, or just has limited abilities, it's a little harder for someone to walk through the mowed meadow trails. And then over in the wooded area, looking at forest trails. This was what we would propose is something that's really just a clear dirt trail. Not looking at any kind of structure. It would be a little bit narrower. Something we would want to really start disrupting, picking down trees to create trails in those areas. And then we have groves. So there's a lot of meadow out here. Some of in the conservation report, they talk about creating groves of trees to support like chestnut trees that are wiped out in the wildlife. So there's opportunities for that kind of plantings as well. And then I have the next row down, I have your existing shelter. On the south side, there's a little shelter. Maybe we create something that's similar to that. If someone's walking out, one thing to think about is it's a big park, so 100 acres, and if you're out there walking and a storm comes up, there's no place for protection. So that's something like that maybe in the area that's not restricted, place where someone could stop and rest, or just get out of the weather for a little while. And then we have a couple of styles of restrooms. We propose a vault style restroom, similar to what the Jogga Park District uses. They have good luck with that. It's seasonal, it's year-round use. It's not plumbed, so it is something that does require pumping out. I believe they really, even though the busy ones, they may do it once or twice a year. It's not as often as you would think. It does require a permit through the EPA, but essentially it's an all concrete structure. It doesn't look like it, but it's textured. It's sided. You can have different options for siding, wood or stone, different textures for the roof, and they come in different sizes as well. So it could be single, it could be a double, multiple sizes. And essentially they dig a hole, they bring a truck, and they drop the vault in, which is essentially the tank, and then they have the top part that sets on top. I mean, it's a simplified installation, but that's about what it involves. They build it off-site and just deliver it on a truck trailer and bring it into the area. And then signage, so educational. There's a lot of educational opportunities on this site. So if meadows are created, if groves are created, it would be nice to have some signage that would tell people what's going on, what was the intent of that, those areas. Have the butterfly garden, there's some signage associated with that. You can have overall signage, just even, not just the meadow, but maybe different views, describing what habitat is out there, what type of animals you might be seeing. Kind of something you might see in the metro parks, more graphic. Could be coincide with the schools as well, educational programs for the school, field trips, any number of options. And then some seating, simple seating. There are some out there already, but there may be more opportunities for little spots for people to watch stop at a single bench and make it bird watch, or just rest them in the meadows, butterfly watch. With the meadows, you can generate a lot of pollinators, a lot of different animals coming through. You get birds, hawks, a number of items, different insects. So I think some seeding areas. There are some seeding areas, but it might be nice to add some, supplement that as kind of divided around the site as well. So if we go to the next two are the same as that overall, which is a little easier to see. So what we would propose is, so we have number 8 that kind of starts from about where the existing shelter is, and it's like this gray spine that goes through the site. So that was what we would propose as kind of a main spine of the gray gravel walkway. So that's something that you can go from the south to the north. It would be kind of an overall structure for the park. And up above that, we also propose a smaller loop, which is just to the, just keep going up a little bit more. So kind of up in that area. So someone may not have these hills can be kind of steep, and we thought it would be nice to have a smaller loop trail that if someone comes out, maybe they have a walker, maybe they're in a wheelchair, maybe they're just, have limited abilities. Maybe it's a small loop and they could come out and do some, loops. Well, maybe the kids are on the playground and you do a little loop, but that way you can still see what's going on. There could be a concert going on and someone could walk around, but we've done this before in other parks and it's amazing. Even though it's small, it is something, you're not getting the full-fledged walk up the hills, and maybe the hill is wet, maybe it's winter, and it's cold. You can do a little loop rather than going in to the full depth of the park. So that would be so both of those would be gravel trails. Majority of the trails, the mowed grass trails, I would propose leaving. Maybe simplify it a little bit, remove some of them. You can see the dark green trails are what's showing there. Would be the mowed trails. It may be a way of someone, if they can't go up the steep hill, maybe that's a way for them to kind of circumvent and go around. A little less slope on those trails. But it's a way of, there's a nice loop, so if you do the whole loop, I believe it was about 1.25 miles. You went all the way around the perimeter of the site. And it would just kind of similar to what you have now. It would just require mowing occasionally. It might be worth looking at putting in a different seed mix for those, but it wouldn't be necessary. It seems, once you get out of the wet season, they seem to hold them pretty well. Let's see. So I'll just kind of run through the numbered items quickly. So we have the gravel parking lot. That's obviously it's a maintenance item. Just could use top dressing and some grading just to keep it maintained. From that parking lot, so that really slopes to the east. I would propose like a bio detention on the end of that. So that's going to catch silt that's coming off the parking lot and catch it before it goes into the surrounding creeks or into the ditches. That just really would help filter that. And if there's any oils or anything that comes off of cars, salt from cars will go into that and it'll help filter it. And the bio retention is kind of a special soil mix with different plant material that will transpirate the water that gets into those basins. So then we have the two stalls over to the bottom right of that parking lot. I showed the proposed restroom in that area. I didn't want to put it front and center, but also really put it up toward the front that if someone pulls in, they could use it, or if someone's leaving the park or they get to the park, it would be easy access, and it's within that activity area that it's allowed. So we can't really put it outside of the area, but it's in proximity to the shelter and the playground as well. so let's see, we have number 5, which is just kind of north of the playground, where this is where we discussed with Squid River Watershed Partners that part of their program is they would build a rain garden for the site. That's something that they need council to, I guess, approve so they can move ahead with that. They would propose to do that later this summer, if that's approved, and they would build up to, I think it's maybe around 600 square feet. They will do all the work, they will buy the plant material, they'll actually look at the area and kind of microtopography, and they'll locate it in the field. That can all be approved by the park board. And what I would propose, in addition to that, and it doesn't have to happen at the same time, but it's kind of a drainage swale that runs down along that, between the parking lot and the playground, it's road landing. So that could become a swale, like a vegetated swale that would capture water that's coming down the hill, take it to the rain garden, and then take it along to the lateral retention. So kind of capture a lot of that, and maybe it would help dry that area out. It would make it a little more usable in wetter seasons for concerts, but it's extra amenity. It would create habitat for wetland plants and wetland species. So in addition to the gray, the main gray spine, but also propose a gravel path that would go from the shelter to the playground. So you would have the gravel trail, the main gravel trail, and then you would also have a kind of an internal gravel trail that would connect the two items. So when it is pretty wet, then it's easy to get through. You may need a little bit of a boardwalk bridge over that bioswale. That goes in, but it just would help access to the playground. I think some consequence that it's pretty wet there to get through to the playground.
Show where that would be, Rich, that path?
Right, yep, right in there.
Okay.
Be kind of a short loop between the corner of the playground and the picnic shelter. But it also would connect into that trail that connects back to the parking lot. So it's sort of a multi-purpose trail.
Oh, we are. That's good.
So the number 7, there's a couple of different areas on the site that are showing up as low spots. Those are areas that could be enhanced as wetland, add additional plantings, give it some buffer, just create an additional habitat area. You've got the one wetland, and this would really just supplement those as a couple smaller for different habitat, the different species in those areas. But they're already wet, so why not enhance them? That spot right in there is actually there's an existing growth of trees. And so the thought would be, right there. So that would be there's a low area right there, and then there's one just above the right below the playground. So we have these large swaths that you can see, those with the yellow outline, kind of amoeba shape. Those would be meadows. So what we would propose is that no more haying operations going on as we create these large expanses of meadows. What I did was kind of tie these in with the soil types. So we have that division between that amoeba and then that little darker color one. We can get different types of meadows. They could be different wildflowers. One could be more of a grassy meadow. The other could be more of a pollinator meadow. But we want to support the habitat that's out there, the bottlenecks. I know that's a common theme that's come up. So these meadows are ways of limiting maintenance, creating habitat, improving the soil, because the plant material over the year would die down over the winter, and then add really nutrients to the soil, and then in the spring everything will grow back. And these are features that could be managed in several different ways. One would be to manage invasives. So there's a whole preparation process that goes on in creating meadow areas. Part of that involves involves going out and really studying what's out there. So I know there are a lot of invasives out there, but there's different ways of treating it. There's not really one method of treating. Really need to see what's out there, the best way of treating it. It could be, they do have a blanket treatment of the site with the herbicide, and you really have to do that several times, let it grow back, and then plant the meadow, and that has a very high success rate. There's a way of just cutting the meadow and drilling it with the seed. That does work, but it doesn't really take care of a lot of invasives. They can come back. And then there's ways of just doing small areas at a time. The burn is one way of doing preparation, but they found that doesn't take care of all the invasives. There could be woody invasives that it really doesn't affect. So it takes a study of what's out there, have a company that specializes in identifying those different plant materials, and then we can see what's best in terms of wildflowers, or there's what they call grass and forbs. So you have the wildflowers, the pollinators, and then you have the grasses. And then there's grasses, you get tall grass, you can be short. So there's a variety of materials that can be used, and it also depends on the slope. So you could have different mix that's on the slope that gives it a little more stability, a little bit more erosion protection for the slopes as well.
Before you go on, Rich, I heard you say no more mowing, right?
Right. So, and that would be what could happen when the meadow is it could be mowed every few years, but you're not taking that material away. So you mow it, and then that's a way of controlling trees from growing up. So it cuts down the trees. If you just let it go completely, eventually trees and hardwood will grow up in there. So, but not an annual mowing like you were.
So what they were paying, we wouldn't do any of that.
That was right. That is what we would propose. And right now, because of the amount of invasives, it's really not good hay for, you can't eat it. They use it for bedding, but it also interrupts the habitat for the bobolings and nesting period. So it has, obviously the hay has to be cut at a certain time when it's dry, but that may coincide with nesting or habitat in the area. So there's a timing issue that there's some conflicts with in the current game.
But obviously,
We always cut after August 1st,
Okay.
which is after the bobbling season.
And yeah, I know it has to be sort of dry and
but they'd still be mowing the grass.
correct.
You mentioned the EPA permit would need to be needed for a restroom. Is that Ohio EPA or federal?
I don't.
Ohio. And as far as burn is concerned, is that annual burning?
Well, that's a program, so it could be, it could be divided up and done sections annually, but you wouldn't burn the same thing every year. So it might be like a 3-year cycle. So you burn one section 1 year, maybe burn another section, and sort of space it that way. Because you want to have enough of the grasses and the metal material for that can burn. If you burn it every year, you won't have enough of that. That's
But the main thing is that you're trying to get at is to get rid of the invasives. and
Right,
promote
yeah.
the natural.
right. And it does help with nutrients as well when it's burned. So it gives that nutrients back into the soil, carbon back into the soil. So that's helpful. That's a that way as well.
So burning is good for the soil.
Right. Carbon. So you can see in the plan, it's hard to see it on the screen, but there are masses of trees, not over the whole area, but there's a clump that's, in that area, that clumps along the edge, and then another clump toward the middle. So the thought is that you could bring back some of these maybe some of the native trees that like the chestnut trees, but I would say it would need to be a variety of trees. You don't wanna have one kind, if you put chestnut trees and then a light comes through, well then suddenly you've lost all your trees. But I think a variety of native trees, and they don't have to be, you don't have to put in big trees, they could be smaller trees, a variety of size trees, it could be done over time, it could be done as grants are obtained, different sources for that, but then you can get some predators in the trees, the birds can go into the trees for protection. It just kind of creates more of an overall ecology for the site. Along the edges of the woods, we propose some smaller trees, so you have the woods and then you have the meadow, and you want something that's kind of in between understory trees that kind of face that down. So you have the birds can go into these little trees and get protection if there's predators around, or if the weather or the winter. It's just kind of how the tree masses work. And I guess you've got that main kind of overlook area. So right, I mean, that's a high point of the site. It's really a great place to put some benches and maybe add some shade with some trees, not a structure, but some trees in that area. A nice place just to climb up, and you can see pretty far from that area. Great place. Let's meet up there and let's do some bird watching, or a classroom could meet up there. Maybe some log benches are put in that area, as well as regular benches. You can create a little classroom. So it's a nice high point of the site to look around. Let's go down to the south. So on the south side, I kept the trail. We've got the continuation of the gravel trail. We've got the mowed trail around the perimeter. The side that's in the conservation easement, I would propose leaving that as generating a meadow in that area, similar to the north. That could be based on what's growing under the power lines, what the slopes are, with different factors in that area. Create some little wooded area in that area. And the balance of that south area could be mowed like it is, so it's create really just an open activity area. There could be some smaller structured activity areas that could take place down in the bottom. That could be determined what works best, but not an overall mass, something that's going to create grading of the site and keep it more natural. Parking could be expanded as needed. Create another picnic shelter. There would be a potential for another, maybe a smaller restroom in that area, so you have something that's pretty far. And again, with the bioretention, catching the drainage off of that, just kind of replicating the other side, but just smaller scale. But we wouldn't need a playground in this area. There's one, nice playground in the north. I didn't see a need for that. So keep this really more active in terms of field play, but passive with the park, shelter, the restroom. Maybe there's some smaller. I know that there were some comments on different activities that people would like to see. Maybe those can occur around the picnic shelter. I know that side. I really wouldn't want to concentrate too much because it's hard to get there. You have to go one way or the other to get around. So I feel like the more you put there, the more you're going to attract really probably people outside of the village to use that. So that's why I didn't really concentrate too much in that area. Good overview of everything that's in the site. You said it's a little easier to see in front of you than on the screen, but if there's any questions?
I have one. So where we're proposing to put the bathroom, that's kind of in that wet area. So this is just a dumb home question. You wouldn't have tropical water going in the restroom if it's a vault site.
Well, you would elevate it some, but no, it wouldn't. Yeah, you would design it so the water's not going to go into the vaults. Really, it's just a tank, but concrete tank, so it wouldn't wouldn't get in there, but yeah, we would want to make sure that it's not sitting in a low
Do some
spot.
grading, target grading around that area, just to make sure the water flows out and around it. And I think with the swale, that would be to the north of the restroom, that would kind of bisect the area between the parking lot and the playground that Rich was talking about, with maybe a little footbridge connecting the pavilion over to the playground. That swale through there is gives the water a place to go and to get out. So we're looking at maybe helping to dry that area out a little bit with improvements as well.
So by elevate Rich, how high?
Well, maybe like 6 to 12 inches above, you know.
Yeah, no.
So real easy to do ADA.
Right. Yeah, you want to make sure that, and then so that the walk going to the parking lot would have a, you know, not more than 88 or 45. Because the bathrooms are 88. And the bathroom has solar, you can put solar on it, that'll light, for lights inside, and it powers the fan, there's a fan that does run for venting on those.
In the forested sections, are there any restrictions for trails back there?
On the east side, yes. On the, well, no, not for wood, the dirt trails, no. Though, and those would be, to me, that's something you go through and probably flag it and find the best route. But try to restrict it so people aren't just making a number of trails through there. The more trails there are, it could end up causing erosion. There's some little existing swales may need to do maybe a little timber bridge that could cross those. Nothing substantial.
Other questions? But we purchased these 10 or 11 acres. It's, basically, it was a field and it's grown up in the last 50 years. It's all solid woods. Would we be smart to maybe swap these acres with the land conservancy so that we had control of all of this land down here? This would be maybe an 11 acre, 10 acre swap for a 7 acre swap. Is this to say, we'll give you control of that?
Yeah, I think that's worth a discussion to have with the land conservancy on that.
Or to swap for more, I guess, usable land to the north. We're already, like where our pavilion and restroom and playground is, we're pretty maxed out there. I don't know if land conservancy would entertain that or not, but like Rich said, it would certainly be a worthwhile discussion.
We looked at it once before, the cost of the grants and moving those property lines, it's gonna be like $8,000 to $10,000. It's gonna be kind of expensive event to really gain nothing out of it. So we backed off, but things have changed. Other questions? Down here, Rich, we've had, over the years, people talk about athletic fields. You know, the Boosters came to us in April and talked about a field. And you were talking $1 million and $100,000 a year after that. And I don't like to belittle it, but as I've said many times here, I have yet to see an athletic practice on this end. So they just don't. We kept mowing less and less because nobody was really playing there. So, unless somebody comes through with a ton of money, I don't see that happening. I don't know who other people's hopes, but we've heard that for 10 years also. I mean, they want to.
Yeah, a lot of times you when you have a ball field, if you're gonna have one, if you're gonna have ball fields, you need more than one. You're gonna have a whole group of fields, and this site has quite a bit of grade going across it, so it will be a huge earthwork operation. And yeah, there is the annual maintenance, and then really probably need to increase the size of the parking lot as well, to support that.
I believe at one time we did have it approved from the conservancy to change those 10 acres to be not so vertical, north to south, but go from east to west. being closer to Washington Street would be, I think you don't have the steep grade, less excavation, more natural to be able to use it. No worthwhile action.
Rich, Ted's been on Park Committee from the beginning.
Okay.
Knows it like the back of his hand. I didn't read through everything. Signage, Foundation for Jogger Parks is interested in signage. I think just the market trails, that is something you recommend. I mean, I don't think we've ever had anyone get lost there, but it's kind of nice to know how far you walk.
Yeah, those are always good. Mile markers, like say on the perimeter, it might be nice. You could have a map right at the beginning that shows here's different routes. Maybe there's easy, graded to easy, easy, hard type of trails. Give the lengths. I'm not sure. I don't know how many people come out here and run, do trail running. It's probably, when it's just grass trails, it's a little bit harder to do that. A little twist and ankle. It's not a structured trail, but yeah, I think signage is good for educational as well as the walking. Yeah.
We kicked around, sorry, Martin, back please.
Just quickly on signage, something we found beneficial in the metro parks, in the Moreland Hills Village parks and Bentonville parks. We've asked them to add emergency locations with numbers that are on our CAD maps in the dispatch center. So that when someone has an emergency, they can say we're at location 15, and that tells us where in the park they're located, rather than them trying to describe where it is. So that might be beneficial to have to that point.
Mayor, is Foundation for Jogger Parks, they would take the expense in putting the,
They're interested in doing that for us.
The other thing we can add are, now QR codes. Everybody has their phones. You can do QR codes for here's, links to the bird, the bottle, and tell you all about it.
Rich, you didn't talk about expanding the parking lot. Personally, I'm glad.
Yeah, well, because that area it's limited in space. Really, to expand it, the only way to expand it would be to the south. Yeah, right in that area. With the Land Conservancy, it would have to be a permeable surface, so it would have to be a gravel with, not just gravel, but almost like a grid gravel, so that it doesn't get too compacted and water can drain through, create a whole subsurface system of drainage. And I saw that, I heard about the concerts are in that area, so you would be kind of taking out your really the main grass area, with that in that activity area. It didn't seem like it would make sense. And in order to add the parking, you're going to go another 60 feet to create a bay of parking to add meaningful parking. So I know you have events where they bus people in, but if that's once or twice a year, is that worth the expense of adding parking, and that's taking up green space?
Okay, last call for questions.
Ted, did you have one? Your hand was up before.
I have one. It's for council. I know the electronic, PDF versions of this are great, but some people are more, hard copy people. We can print 22-inch by 34-inch, full-size drawings. If you let me know how many of those you would like, it makes it real easy to just set on a desk or a table and flip a full-size sheet.
As the park committee will be in touch.
Okay, yeah, let me, Jerry, let me know how many you want, and we can get those printed out and I'll deliver them over to you.
Good.
I'll be aboard. Next park committee meeting, June 20th, next Monday night.
Okay, let me know how many copies you want, and we'll give them to you.
All right. Park committee members, thank you for being here. Feel free to
Is there a
stay.
price tag
Price tag
for these different
Didn't
things?
hear anything.
Is there a list of this? I mean,
That's
it's a
good
great idea,
question,
but
isn't it?
I'm just curious, is there a price tag? so we have some idea what we're talking about. I mean, it's a great idea, but people need to know what are the, you know, how much is gonna be the restrooms? How much is it gonna be? Is there a price tag?
We're working on it
Okay,
overall, yeah. So what we'll do is take, and probably look at, we could come up with an overall, but my thought is that also we would wanna phase it and look at, break it out by phase.
Significant chunks.
Yeah. And what makes sense too, prioritize.
that's the point.
Bill, if I'm not mistaken, please correct me if I'm wrong, the restrooms anywhere from 45 to 50,000.
Yeah, it probably could be, these days probably 50 to 80, depending on the size. We found that those, they've actually gone up quite a bit. Depends whether it's done in-house too, if you bid it out.
We did set aside $80,000 for the development of the master plan. They're built, they're not gonna be, you know,
Today, we're around 12 or 15 at the most, so the balance of that goes right into the first level improvements.
the restroom on Moreland Hills was
48,000.
48,000, very similar to the person. Just what you have now, that.
Yeah, see what the brand is, because I did get some quotes from the companies on different sizes. Yeah, and I think they were around 60, but we have to figure, you know, there's some installation costs as well. They may have done that in-house. Installation.
I don't remember what they did it
I know the Jaga Park District, they buy it directly, they get special pricing, and then the contractor, you go to contractor excavates and then coordinates the balance of it.
Okay, so at this time, thank you, to let you get out of here. We'll take a 2-minute break just to kind of adjust, and Dennis, I'm gonna ask, so that we don't keep our firemen here all night, on the ordinances, which, we have a multitude, the very last two deal with the fire contract for the next 3 years and the funding agreement. So if we could move to those, as soon as we take 2 minutes and stretch our legs, and knock those off.
Let me ask you, Mayor, do we really need to do that? Because, I mean, it's gonna happen.
I just want to get them out, so that, I don't want
They don't have to
Sitting
be
here an
here
hour.
for the vote. So it's,
Say 2 minutes.
so,
right.
you know. Mark, I was, one question while we're waiting here. You know, allegedly, today you told me that there was a revised contract that was provided, that was written based on the suggestions of the solicitor. Was that delivered?
No, we would propose to just accept Bridie's red line version.
Okay. Brian, is that acceptable?
Yes,
Okay.
that's what, I didn't know if there was another, like, red line back.
Robert, no.
No, okay, we're good then.
Yeah, because, you know, I asked Brian before the meeting whether she had seen the latest updated contract, and she said no. So I wanted to ask that question. Didn't know.
Okay.
You're good to go? We're good to go.
Let me know that down now, so I don't forget.
So when you.
See you, Bill. See you, Ted. Thanks for being here.
And then there's another thing, if it's just places you play, it's play it on, because all over there, was referring to, so they want to revert back to another. Then the wind blows, I take it out and push the ball in the tree. That's 2 weeks ago, around clinic, they got 8 courts.
And maybe like this,
Okay, good. I can sure next time. All right, Jason. Good, thank you.
Okay. We're back. If you're following the agenda,
It's scheduled. We're waiting
following on your agenda, we have on page 2, last 2 bullet points. Turn this meeting over to the safety committee chair. We could knock off these 2, get these 2 gentlemen on the way, on the road tonight, so. For sure.
So Mayor, thank you. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna, defer most of the safety committee business until the regular council meeting time. But to assist the Chagrin Falls Fire Department, I would like to council to introduce and consider for adoption an ordinance approving the fire protection and emergency medical service agreement between the Village of South Russell and the Chagrin Falls Suburban Volunteer Firemen's Association, which includes a one-time expense of $69,769 to be paid by 1 July 2022 for capital improvements of the fire station and for a period of 3 years for fire protection medical services beginning January 1st, 2023 for the sum of $488,586.40 with a 4% increase in 2024 to $508,129.85 and a 4% increase in 2025 for the amount of $528,455.05, authorizing the mayor and fiscal officer to execute the agreement on behalf of the village and declaring an emergency. I also would like to waive further readings and declare an emergency.
Second.
Roll call.
Tilly,
Aye.
Porter,
Aye.
Bell,
Aye.
Berger,
Aye.
Captain,
Aye.
Kavanaugh.
Aye.
Motion to adopt?
Second.
Tilly,
Aye.
Porter,
Aye.
Bell,
Aye.
Berger,
Aye.
Captain,
Aye.
Kavanaugh.
Aye.
I'd like to introduce and consider for adoption.
We should say,
Second.
ordinance is passed. Okay, next one.
I'd like to introduce and consider for adoption an ordinance amending ordinance 2022-40, approving the community funding and escrow agreement for the modernization of the Spring Valley Fire Department Fire Station, authorizing the mayor to execute the community funding and escrow agreement and declaring an emergency. Any further readings? So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Tilly,
Aye.
Porter,
Aye.
Bell,
Aye.
Berger,
Aye.
Captain,
Aye.
Kavanaugh.
Aye.
Motion to adopt?
Second.
Tilly,
Aye.
Porter,
Aye.
Bell,
Aye.
Berger,
Aye.
Captain,
Aye.
Kavanaugh.
Aye.
Ordinance adopted. Gentlemen, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. You're free to stay the rest of the night. It's gonna be long. So thank you.
I did enjoy hearing about the parks, but we gotta Thank you, I enjoyed the parks.
Good night.
Thank you.
All right, we're back to our visitors. We have with us Ralph Richard to talk about pickleball courts with the Park and Recreation. Ralph, the floor is yours. We'll give you 5 minutes. You know the routine.
Well, thank you very much, Council. Basically, in this particular geographic area, we do not have any pickleball courts for public use. And it is the fastest growing sport in the world today, believe it or not. And there's so many participants. It's encompassing ages 8 to 80 plus. And in that particular instance, just to give you an idea, 3 years ago, the national women's champions was a mother-daughter. The daughter was 12 years old as a national champion. So it's out there. Originally was founded in 1965, and we hadn't heard a lot about it. But today, it's a massive sport, and certainly would like to have consideration here with our parks and the development we're considering for potential putting in a 4 courts. 4 courts, basically, from financial investment, is approximately $80,000. The areas for encompassing the 4 courts is approximately 72 feet wide by 124 feet long. And there would be in the fenced area and that type of thing. Pickleball is just blooming beyond belief. We're seeing more and more people join and want to play the sport. For me, I'm a little bit of an addict. I play 5 days a week, 3 hours a day, but that's not the most intelligent thing sometimes at my age. But it's also age bracketed and beneficial for both men and women and kids. And it's offered a lot of times in the middle schools through the public school systems. So if we have the capabilities to allow that to be further developed, I think it would be wonderful for the entire area here for South Russell. I think that we have enough kids and enough people that play it and would enjoy doing so. So if you're not familiar with the sport, it's played with basically a hard wiffle ball and a paddle about twice the size of a ping pong paddle. And it's just very, very active. The courts are not large. Excuse me, the courts are 20 feet wide by 42 feet long. So this is normally played as doubles for us that are a little slower. And it's a lot easier to learn and enjoy versus a tennis sport that requires a lot more coverage and things along those lines. There are singles played, but those are people that, I don't know, they just want their glutton for punishment. But besides that, it's an enjoyable game, social game. A lot of people, for example, Twinsburg set theirs up. Last weekend, they had a pizza party there, and they had over 100 people. And showed up to play and enjoy some pizza and everything else, and those kind of contributing things. Maintenance-wise, last year I generated almost $3,000 for Twinsburg to be able to maintain their courts and things like that. And normally, in the wintertime, when the snow flies, we recommend that the nets be taken down. And they are permanent, we recommend permanent nets.
2 minutes left.
So, any questions? I'd be happy to answer questions about the sport and anything else.
Thank you for being here. Where do you play now?
I play in Mentor. Mentor has 15 courts. I play down in Canton in the league. That has 10 courts. I'm a nationally ranked player, so I play 3-5 in the open category. I play 4-0, which is one of the higher rankings in the 70 to 75 age bracket.
Somebody, Solon, it's going.
Solon converted 2 of their tennis courts to 4 pickleball courts, permanent pickleball courts. And they're busy every day, all the time. And you'll have anything from young people playing to seniors. I mean, today I played with a lady in Mentor. She's 81. And they look to play stand on the game. So, any other questions?
Yeah, many of the tennis clubs have striped tennis courts as a secondary alternative for pickle.
Yes.
Have you addressed that issue with the Schmidt Falls schools?
Yes, there's a problem with that. Number one, the nets are different heights.
Yep.
Number two, you cannot shoot the shot, it's called the ATP, around the post, because the posts stick out much further, so you're eliminating a big part of the game. You're eliminating a big part of the game there. And plus, normally pickleball courts are painted differently than tennis courts. Other questions?
Is it a asphalt base?
Yes.
Do you see this as a year-round thing, like closed, or is it outdoor?
Yeah, this is outdoor. The indoor, there's some facilities being built. There was a large new facility being built near Columbus. It's got 12 indoor courts. I play at Western Reserve Racket Club in the wintertime. It charges to be there. It's reasonable because Silver Sneakers allows me to play for $65 a month, unlimited play. But other than that, and those are tennis courts, much as you said, but they mark them on half to the court, and we use portable nets.
And portable nets.
Right.
Sugar Valley Athletic Club does the same thing.
Right, well, if you want to spend a lot of money, I mean, Wembley has it too. Sure. And Wembley's $1,000 to sign up to play, and they do not have open play. And a lot of the indoor facilities do not have open play. But I will say Chardon's Y does have open play. Any other questions? How did I do, Bill? I said close to 5?
Oh, once we start asking questions, I shut off the time. We set aside $80,000 this year to look at the park master schedule. Probably most of it will be tied up between CT and the rest of them. But, and obviously, my list of questions, I'm sure some other people's with the park, there's gonna be a lot of different things. So keep your eyes and ears open. We'll let you know on park committee meetings. We would always be looking for somebody else to pay the bill, of course.
Well, I just real quick, the American Rescue Plan Act for COVID is offering grants and, for example, specific Ohio communities in Ohio are already taking advantage of those grants for recreational pickleball courts. And ARC also offers some grants, and the Land and Water Conservation Fund offers, again, for recreational facility grants and that type of thing. So, all encompassing with everything you're looking at for the parks, but there are set aside monies available for the pickleball courts. All right, so I'll keep watching.
All right,
Thank
thank
you.
you, Ralph.
Thanks, Rob.
Thank you.
Ray Schlotz, I see you sitting back there. You're not on tonight's agenda, but the floor is yours if you'd like to speak to council.
No, sir, I'm just listening tonight, but thank you very much.
All right, here's now the mayor's report. Later on in the meeting, I've asked the building committee, I would like to appoint Dan DiAugustino as the part-time building and zoning inspector, $40 an hour, $7,000 maximum for this year. We have to do that after the ordinances because our ordinances do not show the $40,000 starting rate. $40. What is it, 40,000?
Yes.
That's a heck of a job.
I want to stop that.
Kudos to the last newsletter that went out, the winter newsletter Leslie put out. We had 2 volunteers who are interested in serving on the Board of Zoning Appeals. And I'm asking the building committee later on to approve the appointment of Lindsay Self to the position as a DZA alternate. As an alternate, Lindsay would be able to watch the meetings on our YouTube channel. She could attend the meetings as she wishes, and she would receive all the materials provided to a regular DZA member. Come July 1st, we can't have Zoom or any of those type of meetings. So it would be nice to have 5 people there at all these meetings for the DZA. Strategic planner, thank you all for the recommendations for people with strategic planners. Ended up with 7 people. This is the real gamut. They are from local people to national, internationally known people who do strategic planning. One person talked about what worked for a few $100s. One person's worked on a $25,000 strategic plan. The other person talked about $100,000 strategic plan. So it's like all over the place. But we do have a South Russell resident who does strategic planning. And he said he would give us a free morning of just sit down with council and talk about it. His concern, and we had this discussion, is you don't want to draw a strategic plan that sits on the shelf. And he would be very blunt with us saying, here's what you're going to do, here's how it would be. And then he said, you get a free warning. If you want to hire me, fine. If you don't want to hire me, fine. So what I'll be looking at, see when we get, I'd like for a free morning sometime in July, after the 4th of July. Because our first meeting is September the 12th, and we'd like to have somebody here and ready to go. But thanks again. I was amazed at some of these experts that are out there. County commissioners were going to talk about it. ESID, they did not. Interesting thing, they did talk for 10 to 15 minutes on building officials. They're trying to hire people, and it's just like everything else. They did give a nice shout out to Dave Osawater and South Russell for sharing and helping the county with their building departments. Later on that morning, the county auditor had an ESID meeting. Chagrin River Watershed Partners and Jogga Soil and Water were there. Danielle, Dennis, you guys both in on this one?
Say again?
That was the Tuesday, that's the one.
Yeah.
The bottom line is basically they're gonna ask us to come up with we got that letter later on, asking for $3,000. So with public utilities, something to take a look at on the next agenda. We had a good Manbrook meeting also with, three over there, and Kim Brewster and I met there every Friday morning at 10 o'clock for almost a year. And it's amazing how we had to get back into the speed of talking about Manbrook. But I think we're all back on the same page as far as what it's going to take between CT, River Watershed Partners, Mr. Excavator, and Ohio EPA. But we're back to where we should be. I just want to make sure everybody, if you haven't heard, only one tree of value was hauled out of the two construction spots, the Manbrook and the Central Retention Basin. There was an 18-inch white oak tree which went to a lumber yard. About 40 to 50 tree trunks were hauled away for firewood. I know many of us love trees, but you don't want people thinking, that we got it and all these good trees were taken. So that came right from the Van Kuren Company. Bentleyville put down Reclamite on Solon Road between Solon and Chagrin Falls. Reclamite's that red sealer we use to seal our asphalt roads. Tomorrow, Chagrin River Watershed Partners will have lunch, and they're running a tour of the wetlands at 11:40. They're looking for people to join them. It's kind of a stretch of Chagrin River Watershed Partners walking and showing off what they did, how successful the wetlands have been into the park. The Jogga Recycling had the grand opening last Friday. It looked like our trash day, except frankly a smaller version. They will handle electronics, they'll handle liquids. They're open Thursdays and Fridays. It's a real nice thing to have. And they will coordinate, like Tim did this year, with getting all the equipment that contains Freon. We'll get to the proper place, will be drained, Freon will be removed, and then the stuff gets scrapped.
Did you go to that, Mayor?
Yes.
And so, will they have just a regular recycling plastics and glass and stuff or not?
I did not see that there.
So more the separate items,
Yes,
the specialty stuff.
On the other hand, you can drive right in, which is nice, and they'll unload. I'm asking the property committee to place on the next meeting agenda 3 things. Citizens Bank property. Now, I don't think we're gonna buy this thing, but I want to take a look at it to see. We just got notice until we're closing down on September 9th. Also, to put on the committee, we need to take a look at the Warwick Cemetery with our 100th birthday party coming up next year. It'd be nice to get that cemetery up to snuff. And when I say up to snuff, we're talking about labor and money to get it to be respectable. The Chamber of Commerce, they now want to put on 3 concerts. We talked about July the 12th and the 26th. They also want to do a concert on August the 9th. If you have any concerns about that, please let me know. This would be the usual. They're trying to go to 6:30, but the one group can't get their band here in time. That's basically 6:30 or 7. One night they're having Cinderella princesses for all the little kids to dress up. So they're really trying. Okay.
Other than them setting up their musical things, we don't do refreshments or anything like that.
No, we haven't.
It just comes sit and listen.
What I did for the orchestra a couple of years ago, I provided pizza and pop afterward. Because what I noticed when G-Soys are parking cars, these people get out of their car, they pull off one shirt, they put on another shirt, they grab their instrument, they're eating a power bar as they went up there to perform. So most of them could not have, they're all volunteers. So it's like, hey, a little pizza and something to eat and drink. drink afterwards. It was pretty nice and they enjoyed it. Okay, that concludes the mayor's report. Questions of the mayor? All right, we are now at the fiscal officer who has been, this is a historic night, mainly because of all the work we've done.
I think this is the craziest meeting in terms of legislation that we've had. Since I've been here, so. Kudos to Officer Leslie and Brady for trying to keep track. You guys don't realize there's 5, 6, 7 versions of all these things that we have to keep updating and going through. So it was a lot of work. I appreciate that. I wanted to, when you were saying about the concerts in the park, and this is something I thought about before, the way we have the concerts in the park now is they just get a pavilion permit, so it's a separate function. But I think really if they came to the village, could they partner with the, Chamber of Commerce? If we did it that way, then you could do the chairs, you could do the police help, because it would be a village sanctioned event. But the way we do it now, they're just taking a reservation like anybody else, so that might be something you want to think about. Then for the e-city, when they said that it's gonna take about 25,000 to get that set up. I know the auditor is anxious to get that going, so we did send out that letter. I don't know if you want to wait, do you want to commit 3,000 to do the ESID, or, because we're gonna have one meeting a month.
Public utilities.
Okay.
Have it the next public utilities.
We will, and I have some reservations, but this is thing that I'd like to discuss with Councilman Berger.
And then I just, late this afternoon, I apologize, I came out late, trying to it seems like all our projects are all motioned together right about this time, so I went through the amendments this afternoon for the appropriations and the transfers, so I sent that out late this afternoon, so Dennis will do that under finance for ordinances and resolutions. And then the last thing I had was, it's up here with the engineer, I don't know if you looked at all the paperwork. We got the final payout for the 2021, so again, that's $106,855.36. And then for Lake Louise, to close that project out, is $25,265.62. So I wanted to know if I can get a motion from council that you're okay with closing those out. Did you look at those numbers?
I did, we still have dollars from the 2021 road program. There were certain eligible paving items that we got OPWC money for. There's still OPWC money available for those that are going to max out. So it won't be, for the road program, that final number won't be 100% village share. Scott Pierce, because our contract splits, will send you the package. It'll let you know, here's the village share and here's the OPWC share, and it'll also coordinate with them how to close out. But I do have the final docs for the road program finally, and the final docs just came in for the Louise Bridge. So yes, we're all set to close.
So I just wanted, if you can make a motion that you're okay with us closing those out, so I can write those checks to Specialized.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the final payout to Specialized Construction in the amount of $106,855.36. And to finalize the Lake Louise Bridge project by payment of the final bill in the amount of $25,265.62. So moved.
Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, both of them pass.
Thank you, and that's all I got.
Good job, guys. Did last year's move.
I know, and we're just getting ready to start this year.
Danielle, we paid off Bell Road West.
Fellows paid off, and I got, the receipt from, I did receive the check, so that's all done.
Just in time for Bell Road East.
Danielle, the NOPEC money, how much are you talking? How much is left there?
I think we have about 10,000, a little bit of escrow from last year, so, I don't know offhand. I looked at a lot of numbers today, so I don't know offhand, but I know there's still money there for, energy saving programs, so if we can come up with something, we paid, job reimbursement for the police department, for that back insulation, and Tim is working on the door for the service department, we're waiting for that, so there's still money there, so if someone can come up with the projects,
And then let me know so I can find out if they qualify and, it's money there for energy related projects.
Okay, thank you. Fiscal auditor, or,
Thank you, sir.
wait a minute. The third to the last meeting.
So the report I shared with everyone in time for your puzzle packets. It's 2 pages. The first page, you will see the fund balances for the period ended May 31st, 2022. You'll see the total of all funds is $3.766 million. I wanted to point out that these fund balances were arrived at independently match the fund balances that the fiscal officer shared with the council across the board for pending. So if you choose to approve her fund balances, please use the conference. At the bottom, you'll see where our money is. Month end, there's about $2.165 million in our checking account, and $1.6 million is Star Ohio. You'll see in parentheses that our interest rate earned in May, Star Ohio was 0.79%. It's now getting closer to 1. It's about 0.94% at the Friday. So that has been climbing steadily. On the second page, you'll note that for the month of May, our balances decreased $123.6 thousand. We're still up for the year. Revenue of note for May. We did receive our second installment of ambulance fees, which brings it to 25 for the year, which is right on target, budget 48 million. Cable franchise fees, we got our quarterly installments there as well. First time in a long time that it's less than 8,000. It's about 8,000 a month. It's 3% of cable bill. So maybe less people are watching cable TV in the village. It's more like Tyson frequency fights or something. For cemetery plots, we've sold more, so we're actually above budget. So we're already at 1,500 for the year, which is 5,000. That is what it's all. Donations. Waiting for donations received for a playground. I think it was a medical residents. Grants. There was a grant from the NEC for insulation for the police department attic. So that was 4885. We got liquor permits. We get one check at the end, but we got a little bit holding on. But we usually hit our mark right at the beginning of the year. And we got a refund of $746 from the police pension fund. So that's about everything else is as usual. You know, the gas tax, the income tax, we can say it's quite high. That's a net number too. So a little big month there. We're already well past, we're at 64% of our goal there, so it's going well. So that's all I have. Oh, special road fund expenditures. I believe we paid off that loan, so that would be that expenditure receipt for 146,033 down below. That's really the biggest noteworthy expense for the month of May. Any questions for me?
Just refresh my memory on the ambulance fees.
Correct.
How do you charge that?
That is, we do charge out, it's actually through Life Force Management, they charge out, and they charge a commission, 7%, and the fire department charges 2%. But now, it's not like we get a check and then pay our bill, it's actually deducted from our bill. So, you see below, our bill for the month was $35,847. We only paid the net, so it means $40,000.
And you've shown that actually gross.
And you know, the other report, she shows the gross for everything. So she shows total ambulance fees, she shows total income tax. Whereas when I show income tax, I take out the CCA fees, and take out refunds, things like that. So I just show that. So those are in total we match. The budget matches, right? Because It was my total revenue budget is lower than hers, but my total expenses is also low. So as far as the result, it matches. So, good question. Any other questions?
Interesting.
Interest income, as you can see, we're at, 1,000 for May, and if you'll note, that's a high percentage for year to date. So it really shows the increase, that we're experiencing. Spillovers, we're, looking into, some options as to, what we can do with these rates to go out and in, as opposed to, last time we did not commit it, and it dropped. And we were left getting very little interest income. So, no, it looks like the trend will continue for the near future.
79 basis points, then up a little, 1 point.
It's at 94 now, so we'll keep going, yeah. No, it's really good for us because we're at credit.
Thanks, Ed.
Since this is now a new meeting, we had an investment meeting earlier this evening. Did we mention or talk about possibly moving Star Ohio money, just as kind of?
Yeah, just, we want to discuss it with the finance committee, but the village, I guess it's the investment committee met earlier to discuss. We had meter investments, updated proposal, about a year ago, we met with them. And they laid out some options for, maybe updating our portfolio, we had historically, that's what you can see on page 1, either a checking account or Star Ohio. Meter investments actually, the ones who manage Star Ohio, and many other municipalities. So about a year ago, we talked to them, and we talked about here's what we get some thoughts for you. We wanted to update those numbers, right? Because the interest rates are higher, so potential returns are slightly higher. So we discussed that, and we're gonna get some thoughts to the finance committee soon on that, but we think that there's an opportunity for us to maybe a portion of our funds that are new, Star Ohio, into some other investments. We get a higher yield on it.
Which we've done before.
We've in the past, we had some CRs that we did that was like a 1 year kind of a CD for municipalities to get a higher rate and lock that in. So we've done that. Just not for meter. It was more of a trend.
And as I recall, Adam, the revised code specifies pretty tightly what a municipality can invest in. It's not like we're, buying little coins or something.
Correct.
Bitcoin.
We're very limited. We're limited in term and investment for sure.
And Meter is a specialist in, whether they know what we can invest in and not.
Yeah, they do Star Ohio, they do Novak, they do most municipalities. They're pretty well versed in it. And you do have to have someone in your village who has, CPs and license credentials. We have that. Danielle has that for sure. I think last time around when the CRs, I went and did the CPs. But then with Star Ohio, you don't. So once we had everything Star Ohio, I didn't do it, but then Danielle went ahead and did it on her own. So it's probably.
All right, we're now the finance committee.
The Finance Committee met today at 6:30 PM, primarily to discuss developing recommendations to council for the establishment of reserve funds. I will address that in a little while here. First of all, I'd like to make a motion to approve donations to the Park Fund in the memory of Greg Pike. Total receipts to date are about $300. So moved.
Second.
Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion passes.
Second order of business is the ECID update and consider approval of contributions toward the formation of the ECID. Mayor's report pretty succinctly captured what happened at the ECID meeting. Also suggested that it cost us about $300 or $3,000 to establish the ECID. It seems like at least Councilman Porter has some questions about the ECID. I don't know if we want to make that open to comment at this time with the finance committee.
Glad to comment. It seems to me that you pay the money into some fund, the ESID for Bainbridge, us, and Russell is established. This erosion control kind of thing. And ultimately, the taxpayers of each municipality are paying for whatever projects are done. And I'm wondering, it wasn't clear to me, if Bainbridge, if there's a project in Bainbridge, are we splitting it between the 3 municipalities?
No.
Just Bainbridge?
Everybody's independent, so the village, like for Parkland, if we're gonna do a bond, it's costs us for bond council, get all the paperwork together. So we budgeted $15,000 for that, but to do the sit at the county, they're estimating, because then it's its own entity kind of thing, so it's gonna be a little bit more expensive, 20 to 25,000. But once we're in, then we're in, and if we have projects, fine, if we don't have projects, that's fine too, but you're not part of anybody's, any of the other municipalities' projects, and it would be on the residents that would be doing the project to pay, the fees through the county. But the good thing, the one thing I find beneficial about the ESID is if there's one resident has a problem in their yard, they have a case like that in another county, and they're able to help that person and then be able to put it on their tax assessment for the next. It depends what we can get along, they can get along for.
And under the ESID, the entire cost of that project, with the exception of some of the benefits that this resident would be borne by that one resident.
Right.
If it's a group of residents, the households share the costs of that project. If it's
Only their
undertaken
project.
under the ESID, only their problem.
Not with anything Bainbridge or Russell, like the neighborhood of Russell, if they're doing something, those residents share the burden of that. But the idea of it is that if you get enough projects together, they can go out and get a loan for a bigger dollar amount, hopefully a lower interest rate. But then each individual project and those affected by that project would pay the cost for what's affecting them.
And there's a 5-member board for the ESID at least. that would just-
I think you have to have representation from each of
Each
your
area.
entities, so we would have at least one person from South Russell on the board.
So it's, the Southwest Wilson could have a project for erosion control. And the board could determine that.
It will go to the county, and it's between the county and the resident and the village's auditor.
As an appeal.
Well, they don't, so somebody, so if we had this ESID in place and Parkland came to us, we could just say, go to the county, they have this program, and then they handle it all. And they walk them through the process, they do all the paperwork, they help them to get the loans, and then they put it on their tax assessment.
So it bypasses the village debt.
Right, we're out of it, so there's no,
We're out of it, but we're in it because we have the representation,
exactly.
who is apprised of what's going on with that
Right, but
particular
it's an
project.
unbiased opinion from the county besides that person on the board to decide if it's a project to go forward and then, and they handle all of it. Then it takes the administrative burden off of us as well as, deciding if we're going to do it or not. Plus, you can get smaller projects. If you had one resident come with a big water problem and they asked us to give them a bond, would we go out and get a bond for one person? I don't know. But if it was one person, you could say, you go to the county, then they would probably they are doing it for some single residents. Because if it's a big enough problem, and there's, they can get the loan for it. Because there's one resident we were talking, and I don't remember what community it was, but they're having big erosion control on their property, so they're changing the stream line, and, so they're able to help this person, it's just an individual.
Which was what, 70,000 out of their pocket.
I assume there are a lot of stormwater issues that can be considered erosion.
Right. And even the ponds and stuff, the Parkland would probably qualify because it's erosion,
So, Public Utilities wants to think about this, is that a fair statement?
If you're ready to move forward,
Go ahead. I just want to present to council. The other night, I had an informal meeting with a trustee from Bainbridge. specifically on ESID. And it wasn't a long conversation, but I asked what their opinion was of this program. And the response was, it's a no-brainer. Bainbridge is in. And they have approved the monies to the county. And in that individual's opinion, this was an easy decision. And I said, well, if it's so easy, why are only Bainbridge, South Russell, and Russell on board? And he said, well, it's one of two things. Either there are communities in the county that don't think they have erosion problems, or stormwater problems, or two, they don't want to pony up any money to buy into the program. He said, but from Bainbridge's perspective, it's a no-brainer. I just throw it out for the fact that I had the discussion.
There's a feeling about it too, with Parkland, we budgeted 15,000 to get that set up. And then some of that, we're gonna have to burden that cost. So then what happens in a few years when someone else has a project and we go for a bond, and we're gonna be incurring costs again to try to help them. So if you do it for the county and we do this to help them get it set up, then the burden's off of us. And, well, then the cost will be significantly less.
When we were at the fishing event, the chief, when you looked at the Bell silt pond, what they're gonna have to do, I think they're talking about $80,000, and they don't even have a homeowners association. It's kind of a voluntary thing. I mean, it's a big issue.
It's a question of local control, really. If you run the project from your own village or township, then you have control over it. If you're doing a county, you don't. It's really between the county and the homeowners association, whatever. So you don't have that input that you would have if you have it run through your village. I suppose that's the only drawback I see.
But you have someone on the board.
Yeah, but they can be outvoted, presumably.
Conversely, you could have a local village project that affects our infrastructure that we don't send through the ESID, we just do it in-house. So if it's an acute enough problem and it affects our public infrastructure, even though it may be on private property, we can still go ahead and do that, like we have in the past, and not run through the ESID. So you have an option, I think.
Well, the property owner, homeowner association, whatever, could go to the county through, I guess, through us. Do they apply through us and then it goes to the
You
county?
still have to do the whole petitions and everything like Parkland had to do. It's a very specific process set forth for it by RC.
You're right, we could, the homeowner, the village, could decide not to go the ESID route and just do it.
Right, like some of the ditching we did over on Forest and over on Fawn Fort, like those affected our roadways and our public infrastructure. Like we wouldn't necessarily have to go the ESID route on projects that we were acutely interested in, but it's an option.
So ESID is more designed for big tickets.
Right, and issues that are on private property that we don't have a vested interest in as a village.
And the other good thing is you could go on a person's tax assessment, so if they don't have the money, they're not paying for it, that goes with that property, so when they sell it.
Funds with the wind.
So if we're one of the first three communities, and we pay a third of these costs, and say a few years down the road, and other communities join, are we getting money in return?
They're gonna have to pay, get everything, the paperwork to get it changed for them to be part of it or something like that, they were saying at that meeting. Because that was a question, like, we're burdening the cost and they're gonna come in for free, but they're not, that it's gonna be a calculation. And because there's going to be adjustments that have to be made at that time.
It's kind of like Chagrin Valley Dispatch. As it's grown, the new communities are still buying in. I think at a higher rate than we did way back when.
But then there's adjustments to
Yeah.
that about costs.
So it's a count for new numbers. I mean, if you're ready to go, Dennis, let's go.
Yeah. One question I had before, Danielle, is $3,000 still what it looks like
That's what that letter said from the county auditor, that
Okay.
$3,000 Granted, yeah, the county auditor's office would come up with the rest. I don't know if it's through the commission.
Okay, given that, I would like to propose to council to make a motion that we enter into an agreement with our neighboring Jug County communities to form an ESIT for stormwater
No, go ahead.
control issues. And that we incur the costs associated with joining that ESID, which at present is estimated to be $3,000. So,
Second.
Discussion, solicitor.
I just don't know if we need a resolution or if we need an ordinance, but I mean, we could, you know, I would assume we could.
$3,000, so you think a motion would be enough.
Yeah, I just don't know if the actual process requires a resolution from the community to then be part of the ESID. I'm sorry, I don't have that in front of me.
Well, wait a minute.
you want me to withdraw the motion?
Or we could.
Let's do the motion, and then if they come back and say, oh, you need a resolution.
Okay, then we'll upgrade it.
Yeah,
Okay, then
So
moved and seconded. Pardon me, who was the second?
I was.
All right, moved and seconded, discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion passed. Good.
All right, the second issue, or one of the primary issues of having, or the primary issue of having a finance committee meeting today was to discuss a proposal to council and the mayor, basically to establish 2 reserve funds and a proposal for the amount of money to be in those reserve funds. And we have, our recommendation to council is that we establish as a village a reserve fund for purchase of equipment. We have recommended that $100,000 be set aside for the purpose of equipment purchases with the exhibit list that has been provided by Councilman Porter, and that those funds will come from the income tax fund. Our second proposal is that we establish a reserve fund for the Bell Road East project. The costs are estimated to be about $1.5 million for the entire project. However, we are proposing that we establish a reserve fund in the amount of $500,000 for 2 years. And also that those funds be from the income tax fund. I would like to open the discussion on that, and I can follow later in ordinances with wording for an ordinance to support those, the establishment of a reserve fund. So the floor is open for discussion on the reserve fund.
Now you talk about the equipment fund, the letter I provided Danielle was based on the estimates provided by the street commissioner, discussed at the last street committee meeting for big ticket items such as plow trucks and other things like that. We've done this in the past, well, it was a long time ago, and it makes sense to put money away for big expenditures you know are, no pun intended, coming down the road. So,
No, and the finance committee appreciated the street committee's exhibits, which articulated the exact expenditures rather than saying, we want to buy trucks in the future. So, thanks for that. All right.
Yeah, and just so we're clear, even though the Bell Road East program is budgeted at $1.5 million, we put $500,000 in the reserve fund simply because we don't know what grant monies will be coming back. And it's a whole lot easier to add money to the reserve fund than it is to over-reserve and then have to undo the legislation to get the money back if we don't actually spend it on that particular, in this case, Bell Road East.
well, I've been in council 16, 17 years now, and Bell Road East was done before I came on council, as I recall. So it's been a really long time.
It used to be about that time.
So is that considered a connector road?
It's an arterial.
Well, like Snyder is a connector.
Oh, yeah, in terms of the county's classification, yes, it's something that you could use the $5 license plate tax money for.
And there may be grant money available as well.
We are going to be strongly pursuing that. We are already strongly pursuing that.
As we did with Bell Road West.
Correct.
So the $1 million you envision putting away, the village of Sheer may actually be well below that.
Well, we're gonna put 500,000 away to start,
Okay.
and then we'll see where the grant money comes and what we need to do, okay?
Did you say 500?
500,000, we're saying 500,000 for 2 years because 2024 we envision the project.
We're doing, putting $1 million away.
No, that's
It's
putting
Oh,
500,000
total, for
Yeah.
a period of 2 years.
for a period of 2 years.
Okay.
And then we'll see. I mean, all we're doing is we're designating that money towards Road East.
Oh, yeah, we're gonna spend that.
So, and we'll be fine with that. And then if we have to spend more money out of our account, we'll still have money. So, but this gets us started in reserve accounts.
If the county's gonna do Bell Road from Newberry to Lund in 2025, should we wait till 20?
No, it would really have no effect. That's a separate project. What they do is gonna be different than what we do. Prices aren't getting any lower.
Okay, so given that, when it comes to ordinances, I will, propose an ordinance for the establishment of the reserve funds, as well as introducing an ordinance to amend the annual appropriations for various projects and amending the income tax fund to support those projects. So subject to any questions, that concludes the report of finance.
Questions of the finance committee? Solicitor, the floor is yours.
I have your report.
Questions of our solicitor? Thank you for all your hard work through these. As you said, this is quite a meeting. Engineering, nice job, by the way.
Thank you. I have very little to report. My contracts administrator at CT that I rely really heavily on for those type of issues has been working very closely in conjunction with Bridie, and I really appreciate all the open communication and support we've got from Bridie in getting the specific contract language details hammered out for the contract that we need to execute for the Manor project and the Central Retention Basin project. Both of them require very specific legally things to be incorporated in the contract. Bridie's done a fantastic job. We're very close on those. Other than that, I talked to Specialized Construction 2 weeks ago. I talked to them again last week about when are you going to start? Give me a schedule. And they said, we're about a week. When I talked to them on Wednesday, they said they were about a week and a half away from getting their full schedule put together, and they get something over to me soon. So I'm anticipating next week I get a date from them as to what their mobilization is going to be.
They start after July 1st, though?
What's that?
They start after July 1st, is that?
They typically do, but they don't have to. I'd like them to start earlier than that. So I'm pushing them for earlier is better. Just waiting for a solid response back. And that's really all I have.
Questions of our engineer?
Traffic light up there.
Yeah, but we're probably due for one, aren't we?
Upper bid soon, I think.
Yeah. Let me get back to you on that one.
Thank you.
East Washington Street?
East Washington Street. The county went out and obtained bids. They went out, advertised project for bid, got bids, and they were over. So they said, well, we can't go forward. We're gonna adjust our engineer's estimate and go out to bid again. They were once again over and unable to award bids. They're looking at now pushing that project back until next year. And that's not a significant, our portion of Washington Street isn't a significant enough project on its own for us to want to do it, go along. I think we get bad prices or high prices for that just because it's one lane of of road from here to here, and it's a short section, 2-lane road, that's not necessarily continuous with that from here to here. And in talking with the county engineer's office, they're going to amend their scope to include our portion of the work. And so it'll be one continuous project. They'll ask us for our contributing portion of that, and that number will be forthcoming.
So there's no reason for us to bid it out separately?
No, I would actually recommend against it.
I remember we had talked about doing separate bids.
Well, they had initially scoped the project out with the state as doing just the township sections of road. Then they said, well, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. We're gonna add the South Russell portion of the road in, and we're just gonna ask South Russell for reimbursement for, our portion of that project. They never amended their scope. So when the bids went out and they were, summarily rejected, the state said, oh, wait a minute. That was for this whole thing. This is out of scope. You're including work that's not in your scope. And they had two options. One was to keep the scope and rebid the project, which is what they did. Or the second was to just cancel the project and go next year with us added in. And we said we'd be okay with that. And I was trying to get our project rushed through to kind of get tacked onto theirs, so maybe we could get the same contractor. Well, now that the bids were rejected the second time, that's off the table. So we're back to the initial methodology of pay the whole thing and ask us for reimbursement for our share. So that looks like something that's gonna happen next year now.
About 140,000, last I recall.
Yeah, they're having, as we all are, a hard time predicting what to put in for asphalt prices. I think we lucked out in advertising our road program so early and got a good responsive bid for that. So good on us. Let's wait and see what happens in Washington.
Thanks, sir.
Sure.
Okay, any other questions of our engineer? Street Commissioner, you're up.
Hi, this is my monthly report for May. Additionally, HOA of Lake Louise has reduced their water level roughly 3 feet in anticipation of dredging their silt line starting tomorrow. And I believe it's just the rest of your doing work.
Any notion on what they're paying for this?
That's all I have.
Questions of the Street Commissioner? We did receive a email from a resident on Shearbrook. We had one of those storms where they blew down the power lines. So kudos go to the Street Commissioner and to Officer Kimball, the way they handled that on a Saturday night in the storm, and First Gen just wasn't able to get here quickly and they took care of it. So kudos to both of them. All right, we're out the Street Committee.
Street Committee met June 3rd, is in your, the minutes of which are in your packet. The next meeting, we were thinking of meeting the first Friday in July, but that's the 4th of July weekend. So perhaps if Councilman Bell is and the Street Commissioner available, we'd rather meet July 8th, which is the following Friday, 7:30 a.m. at the Street Commissioner's office. And we'll go ahead and do that, Danielle, if you can provide the public notice.
Sorry, what day was that, Mark?
July 8th.
Okay.
This Friday, 7:30, Street Commissioner office.
Got it.
And hopefully Specialized will be on the job by then.
Absolutely.
Oh, and ponds 3 and 4, the reseeding, does that happen?
I met with them this week, and what we're gonna do is in-house, we're gonna rent a skid steer with a track, and we're just gonna round up a couple of the piles that one of the residents had issue with. I spoke to the HOA, I grabbed the money in rental budget for that.
Subject to any comments by Councilman Bell, that would be the Street Committee report.
All right, moving on, we're at the Building Committee.
Thank you, Mayor. Building Committee met on June 2nd at the building office. Minutes were submitted in council packets. During the meeting, Mr. Hosenmeyer submitted a service agreement, inspection solutions for the upcoming year. At this time, I yield for solicitor to reflect upon said contract.
Sure, so, first of all, I think that this is a revision to the previous contract. It's not an annual contract. Our contract that we currently have renews automatically.
Yes.
Okay. So there are a couple of inconsistencies, and I just want to make sure that everyone understands. First, if you look at the retainer fees section, there is an exclusion now for consulting. Is Dave no longer providing consulting services? I guess that's one of the questions. I wonder if that's just a typo. Our current agreement provides zoning, advising, general advice and consulting, managing village projects, answering questions, and the new amendment takes out consulting. I just want to make sure that's, and I would assume that's not accurate, but I think we need to make sure that that's the case. The next question is, in the retainer fee section again, the way that our current contract is that any additional hours are supposed, our current contract is up to 20 hours per calendar month to answer certain questions and that sort of thing. The proposed amendment is now stating after that, any additional hours will be billed at $75 per hour. But yet there's an actual section called outside the retainer fee, and that is actually drastically changed. That now is providing any residential zoning and or commercial inspections will be billed by Inspection Solutions at $75 per hour, which is different. Correct, because I'm not entirely sure. Are we not? I guess my question is, in the retainer fee that we have now, up to 20 hours, doesn't that include any residential zoning or commercial inspections? Inside the retainer, well, that's what I'm saying, so there's an inconsistency here, I'm just wondering if perhaps maybe it wasn't really, intended. And so, I don't think that it was. Again, why would you have an inside retainer fee and an outside retainer fee if in fact the residential inspections, zoning inspections, commercial inspections will now no longer be included in the 20 hours?
I won't try to speak for Dave.
Okay,
I would guess on the first item, I think consulting must have been skipped, just to.
I don't know, I mean, and I had no problem, I don't know that we want to necessarily guess for Dave, I guess my question is, did Dave prepare the amendment? Because I just can't imagine that he's taking away consulting services, number one, and number two.
I wouldn't think he would.
Right, so what, do you know what, and then again, Dave's not here, outside the retainer fee, I'm just trying to figure out why is that separated out this way?
The only thing that, in my discussion with him was, is he's gonna treat us like his other 5 communities that he works for. It's just $75 for an inspection.
So that's outside of the retainer. So currently now, if he does residential, let's say he only does 19 hours, and they're all residential inspections, that is a $2,000 fee that the village pays, because that's inside the retainer.
Yes.
Now, are you suggesting that any residential inspections, zoning inspections, and commercial inspections will now just be billed separately, $75 per hour, they will not be included in the 2,000 retainer fee?
Kind of version first.
In first, it specifically says it.
And why would we pay a retainer?
Correct, I don't know, I'm missing something, what changed, I guess, from the inside the retainer fee of 20 hours to now completely separate are the inspections? Correct.
Time to go back to that.
Well, and keep in mind, this is also dated for the 15th of June, so I just want to make sure, obviously this might be the last council meeting before that. We'll make sure we check the date.
That's Chris.
Okay, and then the last thing is, there is a billing limitation exhibit that's attached to the current agreement, I guess, is exhibit 1, and I just don't have that. Okay, and it's also referenced here as an attachment, exhibit 1, and we don't have it, so I just want to make sure, it's under the section called billing limitations.
Got it.
Okay.
I see it. I can't respond to it. No.
Okay, so those are some of the confusing. There was also like just a couple of minor typos and things like that, but again, excluding the consulting service, I think is significant. But also the inside and outside retainer fee, I think there's
Yeah,
more than
because
just
it once
confusion.
he works 19 hours.
He does all, let's say he does all residential inspections, those are all now separately billed, $75 an hour, and not in
I
2,000.
don't think that's what we would want.
Right.
Right.
It just doesn't, that's why I wonder, and can I just ask, what was the impetus to change, to amend the contract? Was it, because we're changing the fee structure in the zoning department,
No, the only thing I think I heard at the meeting was he's gonna treat us like everybody else.
Okay. I would love to see his other contract, but I can't imagine he has an insider retainer fee and then takes out
Could we, later this week, would it be easiest to zoom this?
to,
Maybe Gary, good, Chris, Dave, you and I, had a little Zoom.
A special building committee
we
meeting?
would have to have a special.
I'm trying not to have a special building.
And it can't, I just want one of them.
Well, actually, we could go into executive session and discuss the employment of the official.
So we'll look into this, get something going this week.
I mean, is there a, can I just ask, is there a, sense of urgency?
No.
Okay.
No, good catch.
So then let me make sure I get that. So Dave will just be talking and we'll figure out how to.
Figure out what you want.
And ask why the changes. Yes, okay.
Okay, no other questions of the building committee? Chief?
Thank
You've had you've had a week of work in 2 days here.
Oh, yeah. My apologies for my tardiness. We had a missing juvenile down in Sugar Falls. We are still currently working on it. So no luck so far. So that's the reason for my tardiness, and I hope she shows up somewhere. Beyond that, I submitted a month-end report, and I have nothing specific to report at this time, except for a heads up. Maybe by the end of the year, I believe we may be running a little short on gasoline on our line item. We budgeted for $2.75 a gallon last year, so we may go over in that line item. I don't think it'll be significant, but we may go over.
More bicycle patrols?
Yeah, we're gonna try to increase some more. Just a heads up.
Move to the hydrants.
Yeah, but we're saving ourselves a lot, and these other departments around us, these big 8-cylinder Tahoes are drinking the gas, so we're doing pretty good.
Questions of the police chief?
I have a comment. I just want to thank the chief and his team for an outstanding event on Sunday. The Cops and Kids Fishing.
Thank you.
It was well received. And I happened to see my granddaughters on Sunday afternoon, and they're still talking about the one that got away.
We have a few of those.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a good turnout. We had about 130 people. Really
Wow.
Yeah, it was a good one.
Works well. Maybe at Lake Louise next year?
Yeah, we believe so.
Every other year.
We're still looking at, we heard that Bullfrog Pond is getting a little overstocked. And government is- Get that Lawrence Association one day.
The guy that lives in the back, we would probably have a little bar for some people to walk around it. Also, chief, the letter on May 25th from Dr. Rachel Jones, the principal attorney, that specifically mentioned you and the police department after the Uvalde shooting. Congratulations. Okay, that's nice. Anything else for the chief? Safety committee.
Safety committee met on 2 June. The safety committee minutes are part of your council packet. And the Chagrin Valley Fire Department contract has been executed, as well as the financing for the improvements to the facility. And subject to any questions, that concludes the report.
Questions of the safety committee? HR committee.
HR committee has not met and but will meet in the next couple of weeks. The only order of business tonight is with regret to make a motion to accept the resignation of Adam effective August 25th, 2022.
Do we have a second?
Second.
we will
With more
discuss it.
regret.
We will send you off from us appropriately in due time.
With fireworks.
There you go.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. HR, anything else?
No other issues subject to Councilwoman Kavanaugh.
We're glad you're back and we'll get going on this stuff.
Property Committee, you're up.
Thank you, Mayor. Special Parks Committee meeting will be held on Monday, June the 20th at 7 p.m. at the Parks Pavilion. The agenda will be discussing trees, benches, and our festival. Anything else to add?
No, it covers it.
Questions of the Property Committee? Public Utilities Committee.
Mr. Mayor, Public Utilities met it's in council packets as I recall. I'd like to schedule a public utility meeting for July 8th, which is the Friday after the 4th of July at 9 a.m. at Village Hall. I think we take pieces off of our agenda, there's a couple other things. I think for discussion, I'll send you a agenda for that. And, subject to any comments by Councilman Berger, that's the public utilities report.
None.
All right, we are now moved, questions of the Public Utilities Committee. Hearing none, we are now at ordinances and resolutions. HR, you're up.
We continue to table the ordinance, repealing ordinance 2022-17, and adopting pay schedules, pending further discussion of the committee.
Okay.
We have a rescheduled meeting, don't we?
Not yet.
Next one, Drew.
We have a third reading of an ordinance amending ordinance 2022-29 by amending the pay range for part-time patrol officer of the Village of South Russell and declaring an emergency.
Okay,
Move to adopt.
third reading, move to
Move to adopt.
Second.
roll call.
Lickey.
Aye.
Porter.
Aye.
Bell.
Aye.
Berger.
Aye.
Canton.
Aye.
Kavanaugh.
Adopted. Thank you.
Introduce an ordinance amending pay range for part-time building and zoning inspector of the Village of South Russell and declaring an emergency. And now we want to wait for the readings.
I would.
Yes.
Wait for the readings.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Roll call.
Discussion. Could somebody please explain to me why we insist on bundling these two jobs together? We had openings for a zoning inspector. In Councilman Porter's own words, he said, the only requirement for a zoning inspector is that he be 18 years of age and fog a mirror.
I don't think I said fog and mirror, but I think you're right.
I believe that he did, but it's a matter of record, so we can check. But the other thing is that, I understand, that we may want somebody to be a backup for Dave, okay? But, why don't we entertain just employing somebody as a backup to Dave, paying him for those times when he actually backs up Dave, whether that be $75 an hour or whatever. But the issue is that we're now basically doubled the pay range for a zoning inspector. I contend that the majority of this individual, this proposed new hire's activities will be zoning. So why would we want to double the pay for a zoning inspector who occasionally might do backup work today?
Okay, first of all, let me, the max rate for a part-time zoning inspector, according to the document I have in front of me, is $29.55. Okay, so we're not doubling $29.55. We're adding $10 an hour, essentially.
So you're
Okay.
increasing it by a third. You didn't double it.
No,
You increased it by-
okay, but it's not double, okay? And so essentially, if it's 5 hours a week, it's $50 a week to have a backup to the building inspector. That's the additional cost. And from my perspective, that's cheap insurance.
I would also add, I was on HR when we went the route you were suggesting, 18-year-old who can fog a mirror. And the candidates we got, we did not extend an offer to any of them. This was 5, 6 years ago, I don't really recall. But the quality that we were getting was not what we were looking to hire. And that's why we didn't hire anyone at that time for this position.
Did we interview all the candidates that submitted applications for the zoning inspector position?
We did not, because several of them were out of the country and intended to remain out of the country. And while we only needed someone who could breathe and was over 18, we did think having someone in the country, like in the village, or at least the state of Ohio, was the way to go.
I understand that we're still receiving phone calls from potential candidates who submitted applications saying, when am I going to be interviewed? What's the status of my application?
I think that's an HR question.
It is, and then some of them had very little, that what Mark just said, they didn't have background in zoning, we would be the first option. So some of those, that's not what we're looking for then. And I'm totally behind what we're talking about. I want that electrical in there, and as this goes.
Whoa, that's building, okay? Zoning is one thing, your electrical has nothing to do with zoning. So are you talking building, or are you talking zoning?
Zoning includes occasional electrical issues, but I think what Ruth is getting at is that the candidate that we have in front of us, being proposed, has the electrical safety inspection. And what you're talking about, 8-year-old and breathing, that's the minimum qualification.
Correct.
If you can hire someone who exceeds the minimum qualification, and you have the opportunity to do so at the pay range Chris has suggested, that seems like the obvious thing to do.
So why don't you consider hiring him as the assistant building inspector, which was actually posted, and not include zoning? And you get a cheaper individual to the cost of the taxpayer if you hired a zoning inspector within the pay range as is established.
If you're talking about hiring an assistant building commissioner with qualifications similar to Dave's, I think you're going to wind up paying way more than $40 an hour. And I can tell you from the last time around, we did the building commissioner kind of route. It was, the candidates were looking for way more than the village was willing to pay them.
But we also, and I will reflect back on an individual that we proposed to hire at the last council meeting. At the time that we were looking years ago, he was not considered qualified, but became the principal candidate for the position.
Yeah, and we
So
already,
I have to question what's going on. And to paraphrase Councilman Canton, we have the votes. So this is probably a moot point, okay? But the fact of the matter is I don't think you're serving the taxpayers of South Russell well by, again, abrogating the pay ranges that we've established in a competitive fashion, you know, and then just throwing a dartboard again to say, let's pay this guy 40. Because he's a buddy or something.
I think Ruth has
No.
the floor next.
Yep, you're right. Ruth?
that's not what we looked at all. He is highly qualified and he is, we're not abrogating anything. This man, in the meantime, has gotten that certification that he didn't have whenever you got, before I was on council. So I'm fully for this. And there's gonna be issues, there's going to be times Dave's not here or Dave's not available, since he's no longer the department head, where we want someone that can do electrical.
Well, Dave hasn't been the department head for years, okay? So, for many years. But somehow, things got accomplished. And I just wonder, how many occasions does it come up where Dave needs somebody to step in for him? Is this even something that is a need of the village?
I call the question. Can we have a roll call?
This is for waiting readings, okay? Kulicki?
Nay.
Porter?
Aye.
Bell?
Aye.
Berger?
Aye.
Canton?
Aye.
Kavanaugh?
Aye.
So you have five.
So,
Move to
to
adopt.
adopt.
Second.
Kulicki?
Nay.
Porter?
Aye.
Bell?
Aye.
Berger?
Aye.
Canton?
Aye.
Kavanaugh?
Aye.
I will gladly go through all these applications. There you go.
It's a done deal, Mayor. You don't have to go through any application. You got your way.
No, I stay in the village. It's not. The capital project fund, finance. Finance committee, you got the floor.
Let's see. Okay. Introduce and consider for adoption a ordinance requesting the establishment of capital fund project pursuant to and as followed by section 5705.13 Charlie of the Ohio Revised Code for the construction and improvement of Bell Road East and declaring an emergency. So moved. I also wish to waive further readings and declare an emergency.
Second.
Roll call.
Kulicki?
Aye.
Porter?
Aye.
Bell?
Aye.
Berger?
Aye.
Canton? Kavanaugh?
Aye.
I'd like to introduce and consider for adoption.
Move to adopt.
Oh, motion to adopt, excuse me.
Second.
Kulicki?
Aye.
Porter?
Aye.
Bell? Berger?
Aye.
Canton?
Aye.
Kavanaugh?
Aye.
I'd like to introduce.
Ordinance passed. Okay, next one.
I'd like to introduce and consider for adoption an ordinance requesting the establishment of a capital project fund pursuant to and is allowed by section 5705.13 Charlie of the Ohio Revised Code for the acquisition of large equipment and declaring an emergency. I'd also like to declare, waive further reading. So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Kulicki?
Aye.
Porter?
Aye.
Bell? Berger?
Aye.
Canton?
Aye.
Kavanaugh?
Aye.
Motion to adopt?
Second.
Kulicki?
Aye.
Porter?
Aye.
Bell?
Aye.
Berger?
Aye.
Canton? Kavanaugh?
Aye.
Ordinance passed. Yes.
I'd like to make a third reading and consider for adoption. An ordinance awarding the bid for the Manor Brook Headwater Stream Restoration Project to Mr. Excavator Inc., subject to an acceptable contract, which I understand is already in our possession, among Mr. Excavator Inc., the Ohio Environmental Protection Agency, Village of South Russell, declaring an emergency. Move to adopt.
Second.
Roll call.
Kulicki?
Aye.
Porter?
Aye.
Bell?
Aye.
Berger?
Abstain.
Canton?
Abstain.
Kavanaugh?
Aye.
I'm sorry. Passed. The ordinance passed.
The next one is introduce an ordinance approving the agreement between the Village of South Russell and Mr. Excavator Inc. for the Manor Brook Stream Headwater Restoration Project, authorizing the mayor to execute the agreement on behalf of the Village of South Russell, declaring an emergency, and moving away for the
Just first
just
reading.
first reading.
This is Vanderbrook, and it has to go through three readings. And we still have the OEPA.
yeah,
Right, EPA has to weigh in, yeah.
Got it.
We sent that out today, so hopefully.
Are we gonna wait 2 more months?
No.
What is-
No, you can have special meetings, for sure.
Okay.
But regardless, we do have to have the OEPA approval. My hope is they'll turn it around. It sounds like they'll try to turn it around.
Relatively
Was there
quick.
an email today about this?
There was, it was us presenting it to them for
I kind of read it as EPA coming back at us.
They were asking for, whenever you submit a contract, you have to submit kind of the additional information they're asking. We did submit that.
Yeah, we had that already.
You'll advise when this is ready to go, and we'll have a special meeting or two.
You still, I mean, we could still do a second meeting or a special meeting regardless, same with the third meeting, I'm just, saying.
Okay. All right, so first reading. The next one, I like to introduce and consider for adoption an ordinance approving the agreement with Mr. Excavator Inc. for the construction of the Village of South Russell Central Retention Basin Project, authorizing the mayor to execute the agreement on behalf of the Village of South Russell, declaring an emergency and waive further readings.
Need a second?
Second.
Roll call.
Licky.
Aye.
Porter.
Aye.
Bell.
Aye.
Burger.
Aye.
Canton.
Aye.
Kavanaugh.
Aye.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Licky.
Aye.
Porter.
Aye.
Bell.
Aye.
Burger.
Aye.
Canton.
Aye.
Kavanaugh.
Aye.
Passed. I'm sorry, ordinance passed.
I think the next one is safety.
This is-
Ordinances.
Ordinance
661,
yeah, 17.
I'd like to introduce and consider for adoption an ordinance amending section 660.17 of the codified ordinances of the Village of South Russell, declaring an emergency and waiving further reading. So moved.
Need a second?
Second.
Roll call.
Licky.
Aye.
Porter.
Aye.
Bell.
Aye.
Burger.
Aye.
Canton.
Aye.
Kavanaugh.
Aye.
Motion to adopt.
Second.
Licky.
Aye.
Porter.
Aye.
Bell.
Aye.
Burger.
Aye.
Canton.
Aye.
Kavanaugh.
Aye.
Ordinance passed.
All right, I've got two additionals. I'd like to introduce and consider for adoption an ordinance to amend the annual appropriations for the following funds, increasing the Manor Brook project expenditures by $216,207, the Lake Louise expenses by $20,000, the trusted agency fund expenses by $100,000, and income tax transfers of $20,000. So moved. I'd like to declare an emergency and waive further readings.
Second.
Roll call.
Licky.
Aye.
Porter.
Aye.
Bell.
Aye.
Burger.
Abstain.
Canton.
Abstain.
Kavanaugh.
Aye.
Motion to adopt?
Wait a minute. We can't do this by emergency then.
Well, you can do it by emergency, so you just can't wait for the readings of
Can we call it that special meeting?
Correct.
Because it's the project and file.
We'll do this.
So this first,
First reading.
Yeah, and remember, we can do the special meetings by Zoom, at least before July 1st. So keep that in mind.
okay.
All right. I'd like to introduce and consider for adoption an ordinance transferring from the income tax fund to the following funds. The street maintenance fund, $394,835. The safety fund, $500,000. The Lake Louise fund, $20,000. So moved. Declare an emergency and wait for the readings.
Second.
Roll call.
Licky.
Aye.
Porter.
Aye.
Bell.
Aye.
Burger.
Aye.
Canton. Kavanaugh.
Aye.
Anything
Motion
else?
to adopt?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Second.
Licky.
Aye.
Porter.
Aye.
Bell.
Aye.
Burger.
Aye.
Canton.
Aye.
Kavanaugh.
Aye.
Ordinance passed. Any other ordinances or resolutions?
No, but I do want to, we didn't do the approving taking fund balances.
Oh, finance, okay, finance. Now the floor.
Say again?
Can you make a motion to approve the May fund balances?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the May fund balances in the amount of,
No,
as presented. So moved.
Second.
Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, balances approved. That way, okay. All right, we're up the bills list.
Motion to ratify the bills of 30 May 2022 in the amount of $197,865.30. So moved.
Second.
Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Bills are paid. Two other.
Yeah, two issues, okay? One of the issues, deals with, the Schrin Valley Fire Department. And, I know I questioned at last month's council meeting, the representative to the village of South Russell that was alluded to by the fire department folks. And I would invite council and the mayor's attention to ordinance number 1995-53, which had its third reading on December 11th, 1995. It largely deals with entering into the agreement for fire services with the department, but section 2 states the mayor shall appoint a representative from the village of South Russell to serve on the advisory committee to consult with the Schrin Falls Suburban Fire Volunteer Firemen's Association on matters related to provisions of fire and emergency medical services. And I would ask the mayor to consider appointing someone to that role, given the fact that we have not officially designated an individual like that for at least the past 5 years that I've been on the council.
And bear in mind, the contract that we just approved tonight, the Schrin Valley Fire Department, the very last page does have the section to fill out for the appointee. So if you wanted to do that tonight, I mean, that makes sense.
I would like to appoint the head of the safety committee to serve as the representative for the Schrin Valley Fire Department.
It's the Fire Department Advisory Committee.
Fire Department Advisory Committee. I can't make that motion though. I can make an appointment though. We can move to confirm. We can move to confirm, right? Sure.
Well, the ordinance doesn't require confirmation, though.
No, it says shall appoint.
The mayor shall appoint?
Mayor shall appoint.
It does no harm for council to confirm, though.
Oh, of course, no. Let's make a motion.
I move to confirm the mayor's appointment to, as the South Russell representative to the Schrin Falls Volunteer Fire Department. So moved.
Thanks.
Discussion. All those in favor say
I'm just asking a point of process. Does that mean when the chair changes on January 1st, that the representative changes with the chair?
Yeah, I think you should be the head of the safety committee.
Okay.
Or is it the-
Does it say, oh,
Like a reappoint, like a committee assignment every year.
I mean, keep in mind, the contract is for 3 years, that's the term of the contract. You know, it's actually in one of the provisions is that they're supposed to designate a representative of the village to serve as the, I mean, I suppose you could do that. It is gonna be an administrative, you just have to remember to do that every year. It's because it actually has the name of the person, not just their title as safety, you know.
That helps you a lot.
is there any benefit though to continuity?
I guess if you did safety, if we just had the safety people every 2 years, you can think one would communicate down to the next.
That's true.
I don't have a problem.
All right,
I don't have a problem with that.
all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right.
Okay, number 2 is I would invite the mayor and council's attention to ordinance number 2016-36, third reading on November 28th, 2016, which is an ordinance designating the display of flags on certain village properties and utility poles and establishing procedures for changing such designation. Section 1, subparagraph B, the flags of the United States of America and the state of Ohio, as well as 2 other flags chosen annually by council by majority vote, not later than the second regularly scheduled council meeting in April of each calendar year, shall be flown from the utility poles located at the 4 corners of Bell Road, Chillicothe Road intersection, those utility poles closest to the Rarick Cemetery and the South Russell Village Cemetery, and the Armory driveway on East Washington Street. These flags shall be displayed during Memorial Day, Labor Day weekends, as well as 2 days before and 2 days after July 4th and Veterans Day holidays. I know that this year we did not vote on the 1st of April, by the 1st of April to decide what the flags were going to be. Mark, that's usually your bailiwick. But I noticed that we also are not displaying the Ohio and American flags at the major intersection. I believe there's 4 service flags at that intersection. So I'll open it to council to say, do you want to vote on it? And, do you want to enforce the ordinance?
I remember doing this back in March, February, maybe.
We didn't put this in, I think.
We did.
We did it last year.
So there'd be 4 flags at each corner, or
One flag.
One per.
How
one
about
per?
this? For the purposes of this year, and I don't want to, we have to take down 2 service flags. So we don't want to insult anybody who might have served in the branches that we take down. So I move that the 4 corners display the 4 service flags currently there, as per, and the other flags that were put up, as the street commissioner did a month or so ago. So moved.
We need a second.
Second.
Discussion. You're basically voting to continue to do what's been done. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed.
No further.
Okay,
Martin, you're a tickler.
Nothing for you, Daniel.
Val?
I'd like to take a moment behind this giant wooden desk of Council of South Russell Village to congratulate both the men's and women's lacrosse teams from Spring Falls High School on their state runner-up endings of the seasons. Great season by all the boys and girls there. Additionally, just want to recognize the Spring Valley JCs for bringing back the Blossom Time Festival for the first time in 2 years. Great community tradition that we went through this year, so thank you for that. That's everything.
River?
No.
Canton?
Yes, thank you. This time I would like to make a motion to approve the mayor's appointment of Lindsay Self, the position of alternate to the Board of Zoning Appeals. So moved.
Second. Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, thank you.
I would also like to make a motion to approve the mayor's appointment of Daniel G. Agostino, the position of part-time building and zoning inspector at $40 an hour for a maximum of $7,000 in 2022, contingent of a successful drug test. So,
I just didn't hear what you said per hour.
$40.
Okay.
And is this confirming the mayor's appointment?
Yes. Okay. Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye,
Motion passed. Thank you.
Is that on here?
So we got to set the
Cameron?
public hearing. Well, I'm sorry.
Cameron?
Did you need to say something else, Nick?
No, we got to set a public hearing. Go ahead.
Yeah,
You're up.
Just continuing with the 100th, and I want to thank the dedicated employees here at the office for getting my first 100th thing on the Warren property down. We found some glitches. Leslie found there was 2 different, I quoted from 2 different books, direct quote, and one had Tabor Warren born in 1831, and one had him born in 1835. So just when you think you can go to the sources there, because there were no birth certificates.
Is there a tombstone in Rarick one?
I've had a couple people call me, so I'm glad that you also put in there to please contact. I think they contacted you first, but I don't have any opposition to you giving out my phone number. People have a little bit of interest, so this is exciting.
Is that all you got?
To, at the mayor's convention last week, I asked local mayors suggestions on how to celebrate the 100th. They ended up with a page, and one of the first things they said is a committee that you're going to need help. I think we're all seeing that.
I can
Yeah.
do it.
So,
And I think with the people that have called and shown interest, we could go from there.
okay.
So we have to do something creative at a house really.
Okay.
100 in there, whatever you want to call it, but.
It's an ad hoc committee?
For this motion, the public hearing for zoning and code amendment hearing, and these other 2,
Well, we have a public hearing on July 11th at 6:45 for the other
for the fee schedule part about the non-refundable deposits. If you recall, the planning commission has recommended or initiated an amendment and recommended for approval, we changed some of the amounts of the fees. Unfortunately, there's 30 days notice for the public hearing, so we cannot combine it with the July 11th public hearing already. So it has to be a separate public hearing because there would have to be enough time. So that's what you're setting now, is the public hearing on the proposed amendment with respect to the amounts of the fees that are proposed to be changed.
So that has to get to July 26th. So is there a rush on this, or can I do it before the August?
I don't know that there's a rush, but I will say, with respect to the fact that we're doing July 11th, and we're kind of changing non-refundable deposit on the Schedule 1, in addition to some language in the zoning code, referencing the non-refundable deposits. What they could do, whenever they set the public hearing for this next one regarding the amounts of the fees, again, it's the same schedule that's changing. I wonder if they could table the ordinance on Schedule 1 to when they have the final public hearing, if you will, regarding the amounts of the fees on the Schedule 1. So that can be just one amendment.
You should be able, since nothing's gonna take effect till 2023. You should.
No, I don't know that that's accurate.
I thought any changes were not gonna take effect until the end of this year.
No. It's just a 30-day referendum period usually. I didn't see anything about it when January 1st.
We were changing the zoning code,
Correct.
which would be immediate.
Well, there's a 30-day
After
referendum.
30-day period, yeah.
But there is nothing, Mayor, in the actual,
I thought I may have been dreaming that we would hold this off since it's so many, a lot of changes and it's just easier to do it next year, but that's fine. We'll do it.
but I guess my point is, I think we sent it on, planning met on the 30th of May, 31st of May? 31st. And so it's 30 days from the date that, so the 1st, end of June, is when she
So if I was
certifies the
30
action.
days more, I put it in paper.
Correct, that's what I mean, I'm sorry,
So
so,
that, I think when I come to that, July 26th, so we can't have that hearing before July 26th.
okay. But no, I don't know that, July 26th, yes. So that's the first time we can have the public hearing.
So we can do it in the August meeting, so when they do the meeting on July 11th, just don't make any decisions, table it till the August,
Yeah.
when we discuss them.
Yes, unless there's a change or council going to recommend a change as far as when these go into effect.
Or we could do it then at a special meeting as an additional agenda item, or we do the manor book. After July 22nd, that's, very,
I would hope you're gonna do the Ansel special meetings well before then.
well, I'm hoping so too.
But, okay, I mean, sure, you can combine it.
Okay.
But the earliest would be July 26th, like Danielle said, or you could wait, I guess, until the regular meeting, same date as August, sorry, 13th. August 8th, I apologize. Maybe have a special meeting before that, I guess, on the actual amount of the
So July 26th, you said?
fees. Is the earliest.
Yes. We could all go to the band concert. Okay, whatever. Can we look
So you have to set a hearing date.
at the hearing?
So July 26th is a Tuesday,
Right.
27th, 28th. So you're asking council's availability for a special hearing.
But I don't know that it's an emergency. Like, couldn't they just wait till August, and then if anything pushing this, it has to be done before that?
I mean, you could.
Let's do it at the August meeting.
Yep.
We get this delayed to 2023, yeah.
I have two.
Well, I mean, I don't think that, again, that wasn't part of the amendment, but that's what was happening.
All right, we box ourselves in here and make a mistake.
No, nope,
It has to be more than 30 days in August.
that's right.
Sure, how long do you think we'll need, I don't know, it's just too tight, so, for a hearing, how long is it?
I would set it at 6:30, just in case.
So we're gonna have a special meeting August 8th, 6:30, prior to the regular August 8th council meeting. Bedford, okay.
If you make a motion for that,
Sure, I move that a public hearing be held on August 8th, 2022. Consider zoning code amendments. So moved.
Second.
Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion passed. August the eighth, six, how much time is it?
I think 6:30, because we might have the two.
August the eighth, 6:30. Okay, got it.
Okay.
All right. You now ready for executive session, Danielle?
I think we got
I think we got everything.
Okay. I make a motion that council go into executive session, conference with the solicitor regarding pending or imminent court action.
Are you inviting anybody else in? And you gotta do the code section.
Move.
It's okay, okay.
I'll get off the minutes.
Okay, section 121, 122,
121.22,
22,
G,
I think
we got it,
it's
we
G,
got it,
That's impressive.
we got it.
Yeah, we got off the minutes.
And pursuant to section 12122G3 of the Ohio Revised Code. And are we inviting anyone else besides the solicitor? And the fiscal officer, and the mayor.
what about the
And
police
council.
chief?
And the chief. And the chief.
So, seconded.
Roll call.
Just get it on your face.
Licky. Licky.
Aye.
Carter.
Aye.
Ralph. Burger.
Aye.
Canton.
Aye.
Kavanaugh.
I'm sorry.
I
I
We're in executive session. We'll do that.
I'm so sorry.
And,